All right, let's dive right into this explainer and figure out why a family's structure isn't some fixed destiny, but really more of a dynamic blueprint that shapes a child's everyday world. When we talk about family structure, it's so tempting to just treat it like a crystal ball that magically dictates a kid's future. But think about what a blueprint actually does. It doesn't guarantee a warm, cozy home. It literally just dictates the frame.
So here's a question that really challenges our basic assumptions. Does the frame of a house decide the lives of the people living inside? Or do the weather, the building materials, and the actual care inside matter just as much? I mean, sure, a strong frame definitely helps support growth. And a shaky frame, well, that can make everything else feel way harder. But the structure alone is never the whole story. It really just sets up the conditions that a child grows up in.
Okay, so the absolutely crucial point here is this. Instead of getting super stuck on labels, single parent, two-parent, step-family, we actually need to break down the 6 real systemic conditions that kids need to thrive. Children require a very specific set of conditions to feel safe, to feel seen, and to be supported enough to actually develop. So let's piece together exactly what these requirements are to see what's really happening inside a family structure.
First up is predictability. Think of it like the steady rhythm of a song. It frees a child from constant worry so they can focus entirely on just learning and growing. A kid's mind is always quietly asking, okay, what happens next? Now, predictability doesn't mean life has to be incredibly rigid. It just means there's a beat they can feel and rely on. Food arrives when expected, the adults come back, and the rules don't just wildly shift overnight. Without that steady rhythm, they're burning all their energy just trying to adapt to the unknown.
Number 2 is reliable attachment. This serves as an emotional charging station where a kid can safely plug in and just recover after a really stressful day. Think about it. A smartphone is a wondrous piece of tech, right? But it's completely useless if it never gets power. Caregivers don't have to be perfect. I mean, they get tired and stressed too. But a child absolutely needs an overall pattern of having someone who helps them make sense of their big feelings and get back to calm.
Third, children need practical resources. We're talking time, food, space. These act as the essential fuel keeping their developmental engine running. Look, love matters deeply, maybe more than almost anything, but love literally cannot replace a good night's sleep, stable housing, or adult supervision. You could have the most beautifully designed car in the entire world, but if that fuel gauge is on empty, that car isn't going anywhere. Resources dictate the capacity for growth.
Fourth on our list is low chronic stress. Just like too much water pressure can totally burst a pipe, constant household strain completely overwhelms a child's nervous system. Now, a little bit of stress is totally normal. It even helps kids adapt. But chronic stress, that relentless pressure that just keeps going with zero relief, that forces a kid to spend their precious energy just coping instead of developing. They might look like they're just being difficult, but in reality, they're carrying way more pressure than their tiny system was built to handle.
Fifth, the home is basically a miniature classroom for relationships. It's where kids watch and learn exactly how adults handle conflict and treat each other. They aren't just listening to what adults preach, they are actively absorbing how people relate. Do the adults solve problems respectfully? Is kindness the default setting? A child builds their entire expectation of the outside world based on the repeated experiences they witness in this tiny, daily classroom.
Finally, number 6, children require repair after stress. This is exactly like a tree resetting itself after a massive storm. Safety and trust have to be actively restored after any disruption. Listen, no family avoids storms entirely. Conflict and tension, they're inevitable. The developmental key isn't a lack of problems, it's whether the adults in the home can actually help the child return to a state of steadiness after the problem happens. The system has to be able to recover.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates why 2 families with the exact same structural label can have wildly different climates. The structure is just the shape, but the climate dictates what actually grows inside. You could totally have 2 households that both check the box for two-parent family. But if one has steady routines and warmth, while the other is just filled with chaos and conflict, you get entirely different outcomes. Same label, totally different daily reality for the kid.
So how do we connect the dots here? Well, these 6 pathways act as the crucial bridge linking the outer shape of the family directly to the inner development of the child. Family patterns don't just magically imprint directly onto a kid, instead they funnel right through this bridge. The structure simply affects how easily a family can provide that stability, manage the stress, and offer coordinated care.
A lot of folks just assume that more adults automatically means more safety. But adults are like supports under a bridge. If they aren't aligned and steady, the system actually feels way less secure. Think about it. If you have two supports, but one is constantly shifting around, unpredictable, and cracking, man, that bridge is terrifying to cross. Sometimes a single, incredibly steady support provides a vastly safer journey for the child than two really unstable ones.
So, the really crucial point about single-parent households is that their vulnerability stems from the massive, unshared load on one system. It's not a lack of love. When people hear single-parent, they jump to some pretty unfair assumptions. But the real developmental issue here is load. One person is earning the income, managing the schedules, and acting as the absolute sole emotional buffer. It's like one hiker carrying all the rocks. Eventually, the straps are going to start to fray.
However, a single-parent structure can be incredibly robust and supportive if that heavy load is buffered by an extended network of community support. When grandparents, neighbors, and schools step up to share the weight, the load is dramatically lightened. The risk isn't the single parent. The risk is an overloaded system without enough buffering. When that load is shared, the child thrives just as beautifully.
Let's look at two-parent households for a second. We can see how they are really only stable if the adults are actually coordinated. A calm single parent provides vastly more predictability than two parents who are just spinning the boat in opposite directions. Two rowers can go incredibly fast if they are in perfect sync. But if they're constantly fighting and rowing against each other, the kid sitting in that boat is just dizzy and seasick from all the chaos. Quality of coordination beats the mere number of caregivers every single time.
Now, what's super interesting about step families is they kind of act like changing trains mid-trip. The destination is totally reachable, but the transfer point requires navigating multiple new systems simultaneously. And if you've ever been in a busy train station, you know exactly how stressful that is. A stepfamily isn't inherently harmful at all, but the child is forced to process new rules, divided loyalties, and new routines all at once. If the adults manage this chaotic transfer well and coordinate smoothly, the kid can board that next train with total confidence. In extended family care, the structure expands way beyond a simple label to provide a broad, highly reliable network of emotional continuity and shared responsibility. Take Aleena, for example. Her family might not look like the traditional nuclear model on paper, but she is surrounded by a massive, reliable safety net. She has multiple dependable adults creating a really steady, predictable rhythm. Developmentally, that robust web of support matters infinitely more than whatever rigid category society tries to put them in.
When a family goes through a huge transition, like a divorce, the actual stress isn't the new label. It's the wobbly bridge period that temporarily disrupts the child's predictability. People panic about the idea of two homes, but the homes aren't the primary source of the damage. It's the transition itself. If the adults can steady the ropes, reduce the conflict, and get the kids safely across to the new routines on solid ground, the child's nervous system will realize they're safe again.
You know, we got to remember a child isn't shaped by one single dramatic event. They are shaped by the steady, repeated daily experiences that literally carve out their expectations of the world. Think of the crazy power of a steady drip of water on a stone. If a household repeatedly offers calm routines, clear boundaries, and repair after conflict, the child's brain carves out a groove that says, hey, the world is safe. But if the household repeatedly offers instability and conflict, their brain just learns to stay on high alert constantly.
Ultimately, family structure is never the final verdict. It is simply the setting of the broader ecosystem where a child learns to grow. When we zoom all the way out to look at the complete picture, the blueprint, the garden, and the tree are all beautifully interconnected. Understanding family structure is really just step one. It's vital, yes, for sure, but only because it sets the stage for the stability, the resources, and the love that actually do the heavy lifting of raising a human being.
So the very next time you look at a family, do me a favor, skip the labels. Instead, ask yourself the only question that truly matters. What does this child experience every single day? Stop worrying about whether they fit some traditional mold and start looking at the real living system they're inside. Once you can do that, you stop seeing categories and you finally start seeing the child. Remember, a blueprint is just a drawing. It's the life lived inside those walls that matters. Thanks so much for learning with me today on this explainer. Keep asking the right questions, and I'll catch you next time.